Hi, this is Derek Murphy from creativity.com. I just published an article on marketing for writers, which is about how to have a $750,000 marketing campaign for under $1,000. And the reason I put it, I was just looking at this advanced review copy I got for The Fifth Wave. And on the book cover of The Fifth Wave, they have this list of marketing strategies that they're going to use, or that they did use, to make The Fifth Wave a major bestseller, which is kind of interesting. And so what I did in this post is go through point by point each of these things and focus on how you can be more successful on a smaller budget and get the same amount of reach without spending so much money. So we'll take a look. This might be a kind of long video. It depends how much depth I go into. You should really just go and read the article, but I'll walk through it a bit. This is the cover of The Fifth Wave. If you haven't read it yet, it's a great sci-fi dystopian young adult book, kind of about alien invasion. It's a great cover, and the main thing with book marketing is that if you're starting out with a bad cover or even a mediocre cover, everything is going to be so much harder. So before you spend a lot of money or time on your book marketing, like, just getting a better cover can make such a huge amount of difference in the ROI and the return on investment for your book marketing. But here's a few things to go through. National Author Tour, I don't recommend it. Instead of actually visiting all the different cities in the US, you should focus on finding those same people online. It's a lot cheaper to advertise online and to get your book in front of the same people than it is to do events. Events are rarely worth the money unless it's something huge and really targeted, but we'll focus on that later. Massive deluxe galley distribution just means sending out a whole bunch of review copies. It's not necessarily something you want to do. Review copies can kind of be a waste depending on who you're sending it to. If you're just sending it out to reviewers, they get a ton of stuff anyway, like thousands of books they have to go through. So unless you have an amazingly well-designed cover that just looks 10 times better than everything else they get, there are better ways to get those kind of reviews. The other thing about especially young adult fiction, they don't really care who's reviewing the book. They just want to know how many reviews they have. So if you go on Amazon, they're not really going to care about those advanced reviews from famous publications. They're just going to care about the actual reader reviews. So you want to focus more on getting like hundreds of real reviews from high school kids or teenagers than paying a lot of money or sending out a lot of gallery copies for major trade publications. Because like teenagers, they don't read major trade publications. They might read certain blogs or websites. They might follow, somebody on Instagram. That's really what you want to focus on. Extensive early consumer and trade buzz campaign. It's basically just pre-launch stuff. So you're doing what kind of pre-launch to put your book in front of the right kind of readers. Instead of putting your book out in these trade buzz campaigns, this is kind of meaningless, but basically you need to be putting out content that attracts the right kind of readers so that they find out that your book is coming because they're clicking on stuff that interests them, or they're clicking over to your website, or they're on another website or something. If you can do anything, especially with partners or people with bigger campaigns, to draw attention to your book launch, and this is really not marketing because you're not talking about your book. That kind of like, hey, my book is for sale, here's a great review, people really like this book, that's promotion. A lot of that stuff isn't going to work anyway, especially for young adult readers, especially when you're trying to use social media, because that kind of advertisement marketing, hey, go buy my stuff, that doesn't work on social media. Instead, you've got to be thinking about how can I do fun and interesting things or partner with people in a way that's not exactly about my book but still reaches the right kind of readers. Major national media campaign focusing on blah blah blah. Media, like old school media, this is not really what you want to be focusing on, especially if you're self-published. No matter what you're doing, you can get major media. There's ways to be in the newspaper, on TV. It's a lot of effort, and often, even if you get on like huge news media, magazines, newspapers, it's not going to have a huge return on investment. It's not going to have a huge payout because the way people buy books these days, it's not really what they have to be made aware of it, but there's better ways to be made aware and easier ways than getting on like national media. You can get on, the front page of Yahoo News by something creative and interesting easier than you can get on these mainstream media things. Sure, it can work, it can happen. You should give it a shot, but the way to do it is to make sure you have a story, because what you're going to try to do is say, hey, I published a book, will you put me on TV? And nobody's going to care about your book. That's not news, that's not a story. If you want to be on media, you have to be news, which means you have to do something exceptional. You have to take yourself and you have to do something interesting that's more remarkable than just publishing a book, because publishing a book is not news. Writing a book is not news. For example, something I'm doing with one of my first novels is, instead of doing book marketing, I'm donating $1,000 to save mermaids. So on my launch strategy, I basically have this postcard. This is what I'll put up on social media. And it says, all you have to do is share my book launch with like a retweet. And if I get enough free downloads, I'll download $1,000 to Project Mermaids or Greenpeace or the Ocean Conservancy to actually, save the ocean. It's a bigger thing. I mean, my book is a paranormal mermaid romance. It's not exactly about Ocean Conservancy, but I can tie it into a bigger issue that people care about, which is Ocean Conservancy. I can talk about how mermaids are a great focus, basically putting a face on the ocean so that we can imagine ourselves as endangered species under the water, which makes us focus more on saving dolphins and ocean wildlife. It's kind of a way to, I'm not promoting my book. I'm taking my book and making it meaningful by connecting it with a social issue, and that's going to make it something easier to share, which still isn't newsworthy enough. Just having the idea isn't newsworthy enough. If I finish the campaign, if I get enough free downloads, if I donate my $1,000, then it becomes news because I've done something. If it's just an idea, it's not news yet. But I can think of ways to turn it into news by actually doing something for my book launch. And that's how then you can just put out a free press release. And if it's a good enough story, the media is going to pick up on that without very much work on your part. So really, to get into this national media stuff, all you need is a really interesting thing that you're doing that's worth talking about. Major national consumer advertising, including print, television, radio, blah, blah, blah. This is all advertising. This is really expensive advertising, and you can advertise much less online. So instead of doing this kind of stuff, like movie theater, focus on targeted Facebook advertisings or Twitter ads where you can really be extremely selective about your audience, and you can target them. For example, when I launch my mermaid book, I can target exactly the type of people. I can target people who love Twilight and mermaids. I can market my ad just to them and say, my book is like Twilight with mermaids. So those readers will feel like my ad is talking directly to them. And that way I'll only be paying for the perfect reader who is interested in my book and who actually clicks on the ad. That's going to cost much less than putting it in a movie theater where I'm showing it to thousands of people, but only, who actually goes from the movie theater and remembers the book and goes online and buys it? It's good to get it in front of them in a lot of different ways, but you're not going to have a great return on investment for that kind of marketing. Extensive online promotion. This is one that doesn't really mean anything. There's lots of ways to promote online, but in general, don't pay for online promotion. What you need to be doing is thinking of ways to get your discussion topic into places people are using. And something I've seen done, like you can even post something on Quora or like Yahoo Answers. Those are free. You can go on there and say, how to catch a mermaid, or what kind of mermaid are you, or are mermaids real? You can be asking those questions and get discussions, and then you could have, another way of answering yourself, or you could have someone else ask the question. You basically want to develop a discussion or a topic that lets people talk about their own opinions and ideas, and you want to control that conversation so that when people are engaged with that conversation, they're also finding out about your book. That's the kind of stuff that's free and can be more effective than promotion. Online promotion doesn't really work. You want to focus on starting a dialogue. You want to focus on engagement, because people run away from online promotion. They tune it out. So don't online promote. Just put content on the internet in front of the right kind of readers that's going to be engaging. and engage them with content, make it interesting, make it fun. Integrated social media outreach. I put a little checklist of what to do with social media, but basically with social media, don't use it to promote your book. That's not what social media is for. Instead, you need to be using social media to interact and make relationships by sharing relevant content that people like. If you want a crash course in social media, you can download my free book, Book Marketing is Dead. I wrote a couple of years ago. People still say they really like it. It's kind of to get your head in the right place. So once you start getting online and building an author platform, you can be using social media the right way and actually make it work. Because if you just join and start tweeting about your book, people aren't going to like you, and they're not going to like your book, because people have to know you and like you and trust you before they're going to care about your book. And so the easiest way to ruin all of your chances kind of is to start out by sharing your book and talking about your book all the time. People don't care yet. Talk about your book 10% of the time, but really only after you've been on there for a few months and you've been providing value. Launch a consumer website. You need to have a website. I talk a little bit about having a landing page or having a blog. I like to have both, but I like to focus on, I make mine really simple, minimalistic WordPress sites that have a landing page. For example, let me go back to Urban Epics. I put together Urban Epics because I'm starting to launch fiction. Oh, here it is. And my website just looks like this. It's a really simple blog. It has an about me. It has some links on the sidebar. And then it has a lot of articles and content. The idea is to post content that attracts your readers. Because if you do your blog well and you write a lot of articles that appeal to the right kind of readers, over time, your blog will start to get natural traffic. Even if it's not a lot of traffic, even if you get, 1,000 people a day, or 1,000 people a month, which isn't a lot. But if you post a lot of content, I would focus on posting 100 articles in the first couple months, because once you have those, and not just any articles, but smart articles that have a lot of keywords that focus on providing value and content that appeals to your target readers, if you have the right kind of content, people will start to find you. If they like your stuff, they'll share you, and then you have natural traffic. And the nice thing about natural traffic, it goes on forever, and it's always selling your book without you having to spend more money. So it's a better use of your time to focus on building up your blog content than it is to spend money on advertising, because when the advertising money runs out, you're kind of stuck and you won't have any book sales. But as long as you're getting some traffic on your blog, you can turn those into subscribers, or you can turn them into buyers if you're doing your blog the right way. And that's why I prefer to have like a minimal blog with content rather than a landing page. My landing page, I didn't do anything fancy. A landing page is basically a full screen page with less options, because you don't want a lot of distractions. You just want one really powerful offer, and basically you can sign up to reserve a copy. For a pre-launch, that's basically what you want. Reserve your free book now, reserve your copy. Just get people to sign up so you control their emails so that you can reach them later. I think that's better than putting something out on pre-order and trying to drive pre-sales. So going back, there's a lot more stuff. I also put out a bunch of stuff on, let's see, authoridentity.com. It's just a site I put up. I put a whole bunch of videos about starting an author website. It's a free video series with a bunch of videos. If you want to learn about how to set up an author website that sells books, you can watch those videos. It'll probably give you a greater understanding of what kind of author website you need to make and how to make one. There's a whole bunch of free videos there. So that's kind of a big free series that you can start out with that'll make things a little bit easier so that you do things right. Going back. And the other thing that they did for the fifth wave was they went to ComicCon. They did a promotion. That's great, but they said they spent $750,000. A ComicCon table is about $2,000. So even like if you went huge, you went all out, you might spend like $1,000 on print materials and $1,000 or $2,000 on the table or the booth at ComicCon. You could do it. I wouldn't do it for one book. I might do something just like that when I have 10 books in a few years, when I can really put out a lot of content, when I can put out a lot of, free books or samples or materials, um, because as long as you're renting the space, you want to have more things that might appeal to those people instead of just one book where, like, if they don't like it, they're not going to be interested. If you have more content, more books, or a better offer, like if you have a series, you can give away the free book, or you can have a better offer than if you just have the one book. So definitely Comic-Con is valuable. A big event like that is valuable. Events can be worthwhile, but it's also really going to depend on if you have a good book and if you have a well-designed book and if you've already, like, if people like it. So before you spend a lot of money on an event, make it small and cheap. Make sure you get in front of the right readers. Get in front of actual target readers who don't know you, just like regular people. Give them free copies. Like, try as hard as you can to give away 1,000 free copies so you can get some real feedback. If you're not getting rave reviews, if people aren't loving your book and sharing your book, then, like, if you can't give away copies and get free reviews on Amazon, then buying a table at Comic-Con isn't going to be a huge success for you, because you probably have a problem with your book or with your design. So you need to find out your main project, like your problems first. If you can't do a 99-cent or a free book launch on Amazon, and get some reviews, if you're struggling with that stuff, doing a real event and putting your books out on a table is unlikely to be very successful, because you probably have a problem with your book that you're not aware of yet. So make sure start cheap and figure that stuff out. Major promotion, deluxe gallery distribution at all national school and library conferences. This one's really interesting for young adult fiction, because your target audience is teens, but your ideal buyers are probably going to be libraries or schools, or at least they can bulk order. However, again, before you do that, I'd want to focus on putting it in front of teens and seeing if they like it. I would want to make sure regular readers, if I send it to 100 teens who are interested in the book, I'd want to make sure, at least half of them really like it. Because if nobody likes it, like if my target audience doesn't like my book, that's a serious problem that marketing is not going to fix. That's easy to test. It might be scary to test and to get that kind of real feedback, but if you can't get real positive feedback on your book, then your book probably isn't good enough to warrant more expensive marketing. So you can spend, $10,000 on marketing, but you might sell a lot of books, but it'll never take off. It'll never be very successful if you can't get 100 normal readers to read it and like it. So before you spend a lot of money, that's what you want to focus on, is just, go into a high school, see if you can put your book in front of the library and see if you can get people to, fill out a free form or leave some feedback or give a book review. Put it in front of real kids and see what happens. Put it in front of parents or librarians, just go to the library and say, I'm looking for feedback. Could you give me some feedback? You can join writing groups, which is valuable. You can put it up on Wattpad, like put the first 3 chapters up. I know a lot of authors are scared of giving your book away for free, but you can't make people pay for something that they don't want to read, and you can't get real feedback and also charge people for it. You want to give it away for free and then get honest feedback to see if you can improve it or you can make it better. If you're trying to get people to read it and they just, if you show it to them and they just don't look interested, if you're having trouble getting people to actually open the book, then you probably have a design problem. It's probably not well designed. It's a bad cover. And that's an easy fix, luckily. It doesn't cost $750,000. You can get a nice cover for a couple $100 if you're lucky, depending on what you're doing. So covers make a huge difference in just getting people to actually open your book. Finally, they said that they have a 12-copy floor display. That's not a big deal. That's just like a book stand. You don't even need one. You can just use a table. So basically, the reason that they put this on the back is because they want you to know, if they're sending out these review copies, they want reviewers to know that this is a big deal, that they're devoted to it. They're going to spend a lot of money on promoting it. They're going to make it happen. And that's important to say. It's smart of them to put that out because, if a reviewer has 1,000 books and this one book comes in that's well designed, it says this is a $750,000 book launch, they may feel like that one is more important, that one's more serious. Maybe they'll actually open that book first and take a look at it because they think it's more serious, more professional. So that's why you would put something like that on the back. That's why you might want to, I could do this on one of my books. I could do pre-launch strategies and say I'm going to spend $25,000 advertising my book, but actually I can get $25,000 worth of book marketing for free if I just do clever things to market my book. And that's really what you want to do, because spending a ton of money on book marketing doesn't make any sense unless you're making all that money back. And it can happen, it happened in this case. This case, the fifth wave has probably made several $1,000,000 in revenue. It's a decent, it's a good book. It's a good young adult book. Kids like it. Adults like it. It's not literary fiction. It's not life-changing, incredible stuff. But it's a well-designed product that satisfies its readership. And unfortunately, that's probably what your book is not. If you're a first-time self-publishing author, if this is your first book, if you wrote the book you wanted to write and you didn't think about the audience, like unless you crafted the perfect product to satisfy a targeted readership, that's probably your problem, is that you've written a book that nobody wants to read and now you're trying to market it. So you're like, it's great to learn about book marketing. Of course, you want to give your book the best chance at success, but all the money in the world won't help a product that wasn't developed to satisfy readers. If you have a product, if you're trying to convince people to read your book, to support your book, to make your book successful, if they don't like your book, nothing is going to fix that problem. That's a problem with your book that you're eventually going to become aware of after you spend a few $1,000s, after you spend, I would market a book for 3 months. If I can't make it happen after 3 months, I wouldn't keep marketing it for 5 or 10 years. I'd put up my blog, I'd put up my 100 blog posts, I'd give it the best chance of success, but then I'd write more books. And with writing and with especially developing an author career, you usually figure out the first couple books. The main mistake you made was that you weren't writing a book to satisfy an audience. You were writing a book you wanted to write for your own personal passion project. You were writing it for yourself, and you expected readers to like it, but you didn't really do the research to find out what kind of books readers are loving. You didn't try to write that kind of book. You just wrote the book you want to write. That's a huge mistake in publishing. It can work sometimes for some authors, but the grand majority of authors writing that kind of book are going to fail financially. That's fine. It's still an accomplishment to publish a book. It's still something, if you felt you needed to do it, if you wanted to have those positive feelings of finishing it, writing a book is a huge achievement. You should be extremely happy with yourself and proud of yourself for writing a book and getting it done, because that takes a tremendous amount of effort. But taking that book and expecting it to be a bestseller and make a ton of money, that's a totally different issue. And to do that, almost always you need to be, like most authors figure out more and more as they go on with their author career, like, how can I write my next book and make it more successful? How can I make it more satisfying for readers? How can I get more people to be behind it? That's basically product development. And don't focus on just writing a book. Focus on building a product that people are going to love. That's providing the right kind of value. That's how you make a bestseller. All the other marketing stuff kind of comes after that. And so the success or failure of your marketing strategy is going to depend so much on how much your book actually satisfies a target readership, which is something most authors don't figure out until, they've written a few books and they start doing research and they start learning about how to be a career author. And then maybe they're like, okay, my memoir didn't pan out so well, or my literary fiction, that I thought was really powerful and moving, write something that you're also interested in, that also talks about like your life, your history, your interests, but focus on a more popular genre. It'll be so much easier. Literary fiction doesn't sell very well. It isn't easy to get published. It's so much easier to have a successful breakout with, a genre that has 100 million readers as opposed to a genre with 1 million readers. You need to do much less work to make that successful just because of the amount of readers that are out there. Anyway, I'm going to stop this now because I'm kind of getting excited and rambling on. But check out this post on marketing for writers if you want all the links and the details. And there's a whole bunch of other stuff on marketing for writers, such as genre-specific book marketing strategies. Like I can go into paranormal romance, and I find top 100 places to market your paranormal romance. There's all these links and stuff. I'm basically just building up a lot of free, useful content on this site because as I write fiction, I'm going to be using the same kind of things to market my own books. Thanks. Bye-bye.